All right, welcome back to the Coaching Collective podcast. So, been a while since I've been on one of these, but today I am hosting Dan Yates or DY Fit from Instagram. So, we've been following each other for probably most of the year, at least back into last year, and had our first engagement at the Brisbane show or Queen Gold Coast show a couple of weeks ago when I asked to take your chair.
Yeah, yeah.
As I
He was
took
sitting
it,
there, he was ready to eat that meal, and he asked me for the chair. He needed to sit down. I was like, and obviously, as a fellow men's physique fan, I saw him there after winning the overall at the South Australia show. And what turned into be a quick chair steal ended up turning into probably be about 30 plus minutes of conversation.
yeah, and I remember I looked up and I'm like, I know this guy. And you messaged me actually after the show too, so thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, man, you looked absolutely fantastic, and I was a big fan of the physique. So I was like, obviously a lot's changed over the time. Like, got a new coach and whatnot. Pretty much the first prep with the IFBB men's physique. So I was like, man, I got to pick this man's brain because obviously with me coming up in the next season and a big fan of the physique, the posing especially, I think that was one standout that I really liked. That was probably head above heels over probably a majority of other competitors. So just being able to engage with someone like-minded like you at the show like that, all over a chair, was fantastic.
Yeah, it was good. Are you doing season C?
Yeah, man, I'm doing season C. The goal is to run a couple of shows leading into season C and then see how we go. It's been a long hiatus since I last competed, so I'm
Mhm.
keen to see the improvements.
When was your last show?
So I did it in 2021 season B, but that
Awesome.
was with the ICN. Yeah, I ended up winning my pro card then, and obviously that's well and truly expired and won't be getting used. But yeah,
Oh, so you're not going to go back to there as well?
no,
Yeah. Yeah,
no.
there's a little bit of I don't want to say too much, anything negative, but once you do turn pro in a federation like ICN, it's kind of like,
Mm,
that's it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
have much of a pathway forward from there.
Yeah, see, I did a couple of shows with them like seasons prior, and I was like, the goal was to win the pro card because like I came second in an overall, then my second season after that came second in the overall. So it's like I was so close, and it's just like something that was just left unfinished. And I was like, what I want to do is I want to get this card. This is something that I've been gunning for a while, and then after that, I knew where I wanted to go. Like the IFBB men's physique, that's the whole goal. Like I followed that for the longest time, from when it first started, when it was the only two divisions there. So like when I saw it, I was like, well, like that's what I wanted. So once I won the card, I was like, all right, well, I showed myself that like I have what it takes to be like competitive, like, all the attributes that it needed to take it to that level. And I was like, well, once I ticked that box, I was like, all right, perfect. Well, now it's time to make the move. As much as I would have liked to maybe cash in and do like a national show or something like that, it didn't really appeal to me like what stepping on stage at the IFBB and like, running the men's physique with arguably probably some of the better competitors in the world, in Australia, especially.
Yeah, see, the only thing, because obviously I have competitors who do try to push for that ICN Pro card, but I generally do say to them, ICN, NBA Pro cards, etc. Once you've got that Pro card, that's kind of you've
Mm,
done you've done your dash, you've achieved what you want to achieve. So sometimes it's not too bad to have a longer road to that point either.
mm,
But another thing as well, yeah, I guess when you do look at doing national shows or international shows through an ICM federation, you do need to acknowledge that there is going to be judging inconsistencies and stuff like that as well.
mm,
And that makes it difficult to nail. And that actually takes me to my next point that with men's physique too, I feel like, and we had this conversation at Queensland. Um, a lot of people don't acknowledge or don't not acknowledge, but don't acknowledge the extent to which the men's physique in the IFBB is criteria driven.
mm,
And when I say criteria driven, just structurally, presentation, etc. And I feel like a lot of the time, especially this season, I saw some guys, including yourself, but I won't say who we spoke about. You'd comment on people who look super impressive, and and then a lot of people be like, "How the hell did he not win?" And I remember this happened with a guy a few years ago as well. But then when you're there and you're comparing and you're really considering the elements of the criteria, you realize until you really understand that, I think, like see that in person, I think it's really hard to like understand. Does that make sense?
mm. Oh yeah, 100%. You see the Instagram photos and
Yeah.
you see someone and you're like, holy God, this guy's taper is
Yeah.
ridiculous. And
Mhm.
then you see and you flip them around to the back and they can't even get their lats out. You're like, oh well,
Mhm.
they literally lost an entire shot on like they may look great in the front shot. There may be things that need to be fixed up, but then when you flip them to the back and they can't hit the back pros, you're like, ah shit. Well, there you go. There's half your entire criteria that is being marked completely down the drain.
Yeah, no, and I remember actually, I think I mentioned this to you too. I remember being backstage in Adelaide and I'd look at these guys because you're not really looking at the symmetry or their posing or anything like that. You're just looking at what they physically look like. And I'm looking at these guys and I'm thinking, fuck, I don't look like that. And I remember
Mm.
popping up backstage thinking, fuck, that's not how I looked. I actually looked better than I thought I did. And then I'm looking back on the stage photos that James took, and I'm like, fuck, I murdered that guy. I'm like backstage,
Yeah.
I was thinking, Jesus Christ. And then you just realize they're just not aligned with what they're actually looking for, which makes it difficult because I feel like a lot of guys really press for men's physique for years and they don't want to accept that they're not it, regardless
Yeah.
of muscularity, conditioning, etc. Um,
it, there's a lot of good things that make up like a really, really good men's physique competitor. Like, the overall taper, like that's one thing that jumps out to me. Like, having a good V taper. The presentation too is one thing that's very important, like having good posing. And I think that's one thing in Australia that we don't really have much of. And that's why when I saw yours, I looked at it and I was like, a majority of these shots like are pretty much like textbook how you'd want them, like symmetry in regards to arm positioning, like able to get the lats out, but then not only that as well, getting the lats out on the front shot, like the arm positioning on like your right arm, for example, I believe it was like even relaxed one was
yeah.
so much better than a majority of others. So, like you don't normally see that like high level of detail. So praises to you and your opposing coach for obviously bringing that. But it's like there's so much that goes into a good like men's physique competitor. When people you see them and you're like, holy shit, that guy's got huge delts or huge arms. But it's like
Mm.
it's kind of like bikini to an extent, but obviously
Yes.
like it's probably one of the harder divisions to actually truly nail. It's like you look at bikini, for example, it's not about who's the leanest, who's the biggest. It's like you need to have proportions, conditioning, like muscle mass in the right areas. And that goes the exact same for men's physique. It's not just who's the biggest. It's like, so like having a small waist with like a great V taper, complete balance. Like the delts don't overpower the arms and like don't overpower the chest and whatnot. Or like you have these huge arms and then a small chest and then subpar lats. It's like everything needs to be taken into consideration with men's physique, which I think makes it very hard. And people that don't understand men's physique at a high level will look at it and be like, oh my God, this guy should have won. I'm like, yeah, but he's literally a bodybuilder in shorts. He's got a
Yeah.
fucking tin can waist. It looks like a VB can. It's like it doesn't work out that well.
Yeah. Also, that cough's coming back through. You're making me laugh. Excuse me, guys. I've got a bit of a cold. Um, what was I going to say on the context of that too? With the posing as well, I actually found when I would reference like European shows,
Mm,
I would look at a lot of European shows just to. So basically, when I do my posing practice, I would do it to other shows. So
yep.
I'd watch the show, I'd go through the call outs and pretend I'm in that call out kind of thing. And watching like the Euro shows, for example, I saw how much more fluent and how much better their posing was, especially on transitions and in their routines. So I remember watching them at the start of the prep and thinking, holy shit, like I got some work to do. But then I'd look back on like the state shows from Australia, because obviously the full streams are on YouTube, and I'd be like, none of these guys are even trying. And the
Yeah.
worst part was even the winners weren't posing that well.
Mm,
Admittedly for me, I feel like posing, obviously you know this, but it comes down to composure a lot too, because I was far less composed for the national show. And I look back on my posing, and it was just little things that you might not notice. But like I remember hand on hip, I forgot to straighten the arm out, which turns on the biceps and the rear delts and the delts. I
mm.
forgot to flex the lat. This arm I didn't have rotated back in, as opposed to like in Adelaide, that was all like perfect because like in Adelaide, I was like trying to tick every box. It was a bit of a nightmare with the national show. And I said this to someone the other day, not because of placing, but I did enjoy the state show more than I enjoyed the national show. And I also found like even the Queensland show, like I enjoyed as a spectator and as a coach more than the national show. And I think that just came down to just less competitive. So I was a lot more organized,
Mm.
felt less chaotic. Like, so for example, one of the things was I got to my tan on at 10:15 in Adelaide. I was in my tanning tent at 10:16. Melbourne, I got to my tan at 10:30. I was in my tanning tent at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like little things like that do make a difference. When you get called backstage, in Adelaide, I got called backstage half an hour early. In the pro qualifier, it was like I got called backstage, and then novice was on, and I'm like, that means I'm next. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you don't really know what you're up to when you're sitting in the back room, especially
These things all add up too. It's like, that tanning time sitting there, you're like, shit, did I bring enough meals? Like, you might expect it.
yeah,
I remember one time I was at a national show with a client
yeah.
and like the lineup for the nationals, I think it was a season B show. And it was just astronomical. The tan wait was about 3.5 hours. So
Oh,
it's like, if you sit there and it's like, you've got shit to do and you've got all your meals, or maybe you don't have all your meals, it's like, it's still a pain in the ass and it adds to unwanted stress. Like, sure, you might not have much on, you've cleared the day. But
mm,
like, what would you rather be doing? Like chilling out at home, watching a show, really de-stressing, or sitting in a lineup out the back in Melbourne where it's probably freezing cold,
mm.
and you're sitting there with an oversized t-shirt on. It all adds up. up. And as much as, and it even plays into the experience as well of how the actual show like felt on the day. Did you feel less pressure going into the Adelaide show, or did you feel like more pressure considering it was your first show? Because like you win the overall, and the next thing you know, you're going into like a pro qualifier, and you're like, shit, I've won like an overall here. It's like, did you
Mm.
feel more pressure for which show?
I felt more pressure for the Nationals, definitely. Adelaide, I
Mm,
didn't really have much expectation, especially when the lineups got released, because it was quite interesting because I felt a lot of pressure coming into the Adelaide show because I thought it was going to be a small show and a weak show. So I was like, it's kind of embarrassing if I don't win. Do you know what I mean? But then when I got the lineup and I saw, oh, there's like 20 competitors and there was a couple of good competitors, and I was like, that sort of took the pressure off because I was like, well, even if I place third or fourth here, it's respectable. Do you know what I mean? I know it sounds super weird to say that because you would think seeing better competitors would make me more nervous. But then nationals, I think I went in with expectation, and that made it a little bit harder. But funnily enough, the feedback I got was that I needed to be leaner and obviously denser, but I knew that.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
I was under the impression I was leaner. So weird one. But at the end of the day, man, like the goal was always to like I knew I needed to be bigger, so I'd rather take the time off to do that because I actually wanted to compete in Korea in 2 weeks. Uh,
Mm,
I'm glad I chose not to just because traveling for shows can be stressful. Adelaide was super easy to travel. I'm super happy I didn't compete on the Gold Coast because that was a little bit of chaos.
yeah.
Like even just arriving, getting a car, driving down an hour, like
Yeah.
what? Yeah, that
It's a little
was
bit different than when it is in Brisbane. Like Brisbane is like 20,
it's
30
so much
minutes. Like,
it's so much better. Yeah, you live in
mm.
Brisbane or you live on the coast?
Yeah, I live at Sunshine Coast, but I lived at Brisbane
Oh,
for
you're in.
literally like all my life. So, yeah, I've always gone to the Brisbane shows, and just the venue as well is great. Like, everything's in a close proximity. It's only like 20 minutes from the CBD, 30 minutes maybe from the airport at the most. It's like, but then when you got to get a car and then go down the Gold Coast, like I said, it's these unwanted stresses that you don't want in an actual like,
Mhm.
leading into a couple of days pre-show that they all add up.
Well, I'm hoping that they do move it. I don't think they will, but I'd love them to move it back to Brisbane. I just think, and even
Mm,
from a flight perspective, it's a lot better because obviously it's a better airport.
yeah.
So it's a little bit smoother. Because I always
I'm
wish
not sure what the go is with the Sleeman Sports Complex, which is where they normally
they had
had it, which
nice.
I think take it is pretty much like the best one. I think they're doing something because of the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games or whatever it is. It's like it's
Yeah.
actually going to be redone with like a little, then they got to make alterations to it and stuff like that to be able to facilitate for the athletes. This is what I heard anyway. Could be a little bit of hearsay. But then not only that, there's also multiple other feds that compete for it that probably pay more money. So it probably comes down to I think the venue on the Gold Coast is definitely a lot cheaper. It's a pretty nice venue, but it's
It's
just the
nice.
location.
When we rocked up to the venue, we were a bit like, what the fuck is this? And then you go inside and you're like, ah, it's okay. Yeah, I must admit, I did like the Melbourne venue as well. You didn't come down for the Melbourne venue, did you?
Nah, I didn't make it this
Uh,
one.
It's nice inside. Outside, you'd be like, what the fuck's this? But then when you go in, you're like, oh, this is quite good. Obviously, you sort of get the perks of doing like the Perth show or the Adelaide show is they are real theaters because obviously they can have a fixed seating arrangement because less people attend. Um, but yeah, I did think Melbourne was well done, especially the way that it worked with how they set up all the production. It was good. Um,
Yeah, it was probably the best national show I've seen. Like them
yeah,
actually run. Like it's good to see that the 11. And the good thing with the Gold Coast show is they fixed the lighting. I don't know if you were there
I
last
heard
time.
that.
Oh man, that lighting was like there's not a single person with like a glute line, and there were people that were like peeled to the bone.
Yeah.
So it was just and even girls with like glute hamstring tie-ins for bikini competitors, like they're completely washed out. So unless you were like there like a meter in front of them, maybe not even on the judging panel, you probably need to be closer. You weren't really seeing the full picture. So it's good to see that they actually fix that lighting. So big props to them for that.
Yeah, no, I definitely did hear about that. I didn't realize the lighting was so bad, but I know the Sleeman complex wasn't great for lighting either.
It
Because
wasn't probably like world class, some of the best. To be honest, some of the best lighting I've seen is probably actually from the FMG show at the Gold Coast in like that casino. Like, man, you see some of the photos that come out of that. It's like, obviously, it's like literally like it's an actual theater. So the lighting is going to be astronomical with like the fixed seating and stuff like that. But that's probably some of the better lighting that I've seen and probably the best venue that I've actually seen competitors running out of.
because I've actually haven't been to an FMG show besides in Bali. Because every time that I've had a client do FMG, they overlap. And funnily enough, every FMG competitor that I've ever had has swapped coaches during the prep. Yeah, so interesting one. So I've obviously I had the gold with the Gold Coast one. I had the girl come on at 14 weeks, Sydney 16 weeks, so I sent James up, and then obviously the last season as well. I just had my Adelaide show that weekend. Mm.
It's a hard one now because there's so many feds that are popping up, and it's just like there's so many conflicting show dates. Like everyone wants these prime dates, and it's like you
Mhm.
got IFBB on nationals on the exact same day as like some of the bigger ICN shows and whatnot. So it's like if you have a hybrid of competitors as a coach, it makes it very hard to be able to like actually go to all of them.
And it's hard, but you know what? Sometimes as well, like I know this is sort of changing topics too. Sometimes I prefer not to see the client as much in the lead into the show. I think it's nice to be there for them on the day, but we need to acknowledge, and I'm not sure how you peak clients, which we've got a little bit of some notes to cover a bit later. I don't make many changes on the day. So whether I'm there or not, it doesn't make too much of a difference. I'm there more for the support, the moral support. And in
Mm,
the lead-in, I used to really try to catch up with the clients regularly. Like I'd have them over, I'd train with them, etc. But then I realized the second I started doing that was when I'd start to chop and change things and start to doubt myself. Because some of the best preps I've done have been entirely remote.
mm. I
Um,
think it's going off your intuition as well. Like you sit there and
yeah.
you look at the when you're writing up the peak about a week out, you go, all right, this is the first thing that comes to mind when I've got to do this peak. Like this is how I'm going to peak it. Like I've seen this strategy so many times. I've done this with so many clients. This is how you got to run it. But then when you get too much data, you're sitting there, you're like, oh, then they might even objectively, "Oh, I feel a little bit softer today. But realistically, that could be just the comp rep brain playing on them a little bit. So they go, oh, I'm feeling softer. So you're like, are they really actually softer? Then there's like where sometimes you just got to trust your intuition. It's like that's what you said. Like on show day, a majority of the time stuff doesn't change unless something's really off. And a
Mm.
majority of the time, like you could pick up on that, like a couple of days prior when things are going like somewhat south or you need to make adjustments. So it's like, majority of the time when the show day rolls in, they already know their food. And it's like the amount of times you realistically need to make drastic adjustments is probably going to be quite minuscule outside of like a little bit of carbs, a little bit of water or whatnot on the actual day.
Agreed. And like as well, I don't feed my clients too much on the day unless their show's later in the day. So that's an approach I've shifted to a little bit more lately, and I've found it substantially better. And one of the things I also noticed was, in particular at the Adelaide show, one of the things I noticed amongst competitors was because obviously I got complimented for my midsection on that day, and I noticed across the day through all categories, it was very common to see like that midsections were quite washed out or quite bloated, and then I acknowledged that while I was backstage, I was the only one not eating, or one of the only ones. And that's when yes, I just had like one of those moments where I realized, like it was sort of like that icing on the cake, where I realized how much more important the lead into that show day is rather than the show day. Obviously, if you've got weight caps and whatnot to deal with, it becomes a little bit more difficult. But the amount of people I saw scoffing down like 2, 3, 400 grams of carbs within an hour of stage, and then seeing them up there and being like, where'd their abs go? It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those ones as well. It's like how quick can you really take in those carbohydrates? And if the peak's done well, the majority of the time you're kind of fully loaded anyway. Like unless something's gone drastically wrong and you've woken up on show day extremely, extremely flat, you need to pull some miracle chords to be able to pull it together. Majority of the time you wake up on show day, everything's done. The loading's done. You're waking up super tight, pretty damn full to the ability, and then when it comes to show day, it's like the food. I always tell my competitors, I'm like on show day and probably even the day before, because I alter fiber quite decently to make their midsection super, super tight as well. I'm like, on show day, I'm like, if there's a day that I want you to be hungry, it's probably going to be today. Like realistically, you're going to get fed a small amount because you want your midsection as small as possible. I don't think there is a single division that realistically would want a bigger midsection. So it's like, and even if it's a small amount, like, 1 centimeter, something like that, that's the difference between like, at a high level bikini level or even men's physique, that's the difference between first and third. Like, you sit there and you go, this one just had a bit tighter of midsection. The midsection's a little bit more washed out. Boom, that could be the difference. So it's like, if you're already fully loaded, the peak went perfect. Like when it comes to the food on show day, is like, if you are going to consume food, make sure it's extremely easily digestible. And then even then as well, like I said, majority of the work should be done. Like if there's a day that you're going to be hungry, it's probably going to be leading into your divisions, especially if it's an early on division. If you're one of the first up, like you were with men's physique,
Mhm.
chances are the food's probably going to be quite minuscule. And if it isn't, like, you have to be very smart with like the way that you're going to consume those calories.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do find it's a little bit easier to nail it when they are posting in the morning compared to afternoon. Because bikini, for example, being later in the day in IFBB is always a little bit more challenging, especially because they say you're going to be on at X time and it never really happens. It's gotten better with that. Definitely gotten better, but I think it just comes down to whether they do a split show or a single show. Because
Yeah, and with that as well, there's the hard one with bikini is every single girl has to do the routine, and normally bikinis make up pretty much about 50% of the actual like competition nearly itself. So you have 50% of the competition all doing their routines. It's not like you're stringing together like, where you might have done your divisions for South Australia probably within 30 minutes in total, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes these bikini girls need to stay on for nearly 2, 3 hours, pretty much being on because like their divisions are so long and like, you got to go through so many routines. Obviously, they sharpened up the routines a little bit now with Fit Model introduction. But that being said, that's why I think probably bikini's one of the hardest ones to land. Like, condition, muscle mass, symmetry. It's like it's one of the hardest divisions to truly nail and master. And you got to have a real eye for it. Like, like we were talking about with men's physique, like you can kind of get away with shit posing. Like, and you can still be in these top threes. With bikini, you don't have like all these little things tied in and then nailed the peak week to the point where they're not going flat after 2 hours. Now they're in the open class. Now they're, for example, like your client, competing for the overall. It's like, you got to really have that shit down packed, and it probably makes for one of the harder divisions to land for a coach, that's for sure. Especially if someone doesn't know what they're really doing in that bikini category.
Yeah, no, it was definitely, I definitely found criteria wise, bikini was the hardest thing to wrap my head around over the years, especially early on, because you would get a competitor or a client who you really thought was for it. But the thing that, like, I think is a harsh reality for bikini competitors, obviously, as like a natural female or a female who just wants to really dabble into PEDs, and just to go into this for anyone listening, I'm a very big believer that PEDs in females don't move the needle enough for them to be worthwhile, generally speaking. Like what I mean by move the needle enough, you're not going to see substantial progress regardless of PED incorporation in a female like you are a male. So anyway, so my point is a female who is either natural or wants to dabble in bikini, the only option they really have is to do bikini. And some girls just don't have it. Like they just don't have the shape, they don't have the
And they
strength.
try and force it, and it's like it's one of the
Yeah.
most like you look at all the girls at the high level, especially with like in the Australian lineups, which are very competitive,
Mm.
like probably arguably some of the most competitive. You look at them, and even in the pro lineups as well, like a lot of it is so genetic dependent. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't really have that shape, that midsection, it's very, very hard to crack past that. Sure, like, you can do your best to try and work your way up there and whatnot, but it's like it's arguably probably one of the most genetically dependent ones there is. And it's like you said, like the PEDs aren't going to move that needle that much to be able to remove that. It's like a majority of the girls at that high level, they've got great muscularity, they've got great balance, they've got great genetics, and it's like all we're really going to achieve with the PEDs is adding more muscularity. Like it's not really going to help anything. It doesn't help dietary adherence. Like, you still got to diet, you still got to do all these things. You're still going to have that exact same genetic structure. So,
Mm.
a majority of the time, if people don't have what it's going to take genetics wise to be able to be at that top level, the PEDs are just something that, especially as a female, you'd really need to weigh up to be like, is this actually worth utilizing, especially if you don't have the X's and Y's already in check?
Yeah, and also as well, we obviously spoke about before on off air, just how like progression from muscularity perspective is about longevity. So with PEDs, for example, it is a long games, and if you are trying to play that long game with a female and PEDs are present, the magnitude of difference that the PED selections, which do have longevity, would make, are so insignificant. Like not insignificant, but they're so slow that yeah, it's just not worthwhile. But
If you got the other factors in line, like your training, your nutrition, and all this, it's literally just time in the game. And this is what we discussed. It's
yeah.
like a lot of people like to push it too early. Like, oh, why don't we do, 2000, whatever it might be, or like add in all these extra androgens. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
in the end, it's just time in the game. It's like, if
Mm.
you want to be at the top, it's like, take it nice and steady, make sure your health's in check because a lot of people will push it. They might get there in a couple of years, add on all this muscle mass, and the next thing you know, they've got all these health issues. And then
Mhm.
next thing you know, they're doing fucking hockey or whatever it might be fucking 3 years down the line, or they're doing cycling. Like, they don't stay in the game long enough. It's like, the ones that do make it to the top are the ones that, have those fundamentals in line and then use these androgens and PEDs and, all this other stuff to just take it to that next level. But they love the sport. They're in it and they know what they need to do over that long period of time. They're the ones that are going to be at the top. And they're going to stay at the top too. And they're going to look good doing it too. It's not like an abusive look. Like, take your time with it. Don't rush it. And eventually, if you got the X's and Y's in check, it's just a matter of time. And that's what people want to rush. They want to rush that time. But yeah, that's the hard one. When you start cutting corners, that's where you start running into some big risks.
And the fun's in the journey anyway, man. Like you want to like I said to myself this season, I had no expectation of turning pro, but like I remember thinking to myself, if that were an expectation or something that would have happened, what's next? Obviously, you can go and do pro shows, but the gap's so big that it's just like if I was to eventually achieve that accolade, I'd rather that be a long journey. and some which I've worked towards consistently, especially considering the inconsistencies of my last few years. But back a topic, what I wanted to discuss as well was growing up, and obviously in early days of lifting. How old are you?
Good question. I think I'm 27.
Oh, cool.
I stopped counting about 21.
Yeah, I'm 30, but I try not to tell anyone. No, I don't care. But genetics, like for example, when we talk about genetics and genetic response, in the early days of, or even like in our early in our careers, you would look at genetics and you would see someone's ability to respond to growth phases, someone's ability to respond to cutting phases, someone's ability to respond to X input, Y input, Z input. But then now I'm in a position where when I think genetics or genetic response is solely structure. And I've had people hit my inbox and then like via referral, be like, he's got killer genetics, you can do so much with him. And then the photos hit the inbox and they're big, they're shredded, for example. But it's just like they don't fit a single criteria of bodybuilding. And I got a very clear example in my head, and I think to myself, yeah, this guy's a freak, but he's never going to win anything. Like, because he just does not fit any bill.
Yeah. And,
And
and the thing is, as
that's
much as like
genetic.
the
That's when I talk genetics, that's genetics to me now. Like
mm,
it's not, can you put on 20 kilos in a year? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Especially when you're chasing really high level results. Like
Mhm.
I said, like if you've got the structure, like realistically, it's just time in the game of adding muscle.
Yeah.
Like if you've got good insertions, nice round muscle bellies, and like, the structure's good midsection, and you want to excel in men's physique, that's what matters. Not mattering that you can put on 10 kilos as a natural individual in 1 year of training, look like absolutely astronomical. But then, like I said, you're jacked, but you look like a beer can in board shorts. It's like it doesn't really get you far in that men's physique. Sure, you might be up there in some of these ones where they're less muscular divisions. But when you actually, pull up into these high competitive lineups, so it's like, all right, who's got the best structure? Who's got these nice round muscle bellies? Who's complete from head to toe? It's like, it doesn't matter if you put on 10 kilos in your first year of lifting and you've got great genetics to be able to put on muscle. What separates the best of the best is like the structure. Like you look at Ryan Terry's midsection and, the overall taper of his physique, it's like, doesn't matter if you put on 15 kilos in the first year, like chances are you're probably not going to have that level of structure. And even compared to some of the other guys as well up there.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I feel like I actually think as well that classic is as genetically like dictated as what men's physique and a bikini would be. The only difference is so many average competitors do classic physique because it's cool that these lines get a little bit blurred. I'm not sure if this is something that you notice. I feel like the category where you probably could get away with like having genetic insufficiencies from a structural perspective is probably bodybuilding. And
I think with bodybuilding, you get to that point where if you're so big and so shredded, it's
yeah,
hard to look past. And it's
yeah,
like at the high levels, sure, that's like it doesn't realistically matter. But like, at the amateur level, if you've got a first timer coming in true novice and he's 120 kilos, absolutely shredded to the bone,
mhm. You can
chance
cut.
are like yeah, even then it's like you look in like the open classes, like and you have like the super heavies, you have someone come in that's 130 shredded, like doesn't really matter what genetics he has when he's three times the size of nearly anyone else that's under those height categories. It's kind of hard to look past, and in the end with bodybuilding, it's bodybuilding. Like who's the biggest bit man up there? As much as you want to say symmetry and proportions all come together, which they do, it doesn't probably play into it as much as what you think with like the men's physique side of things and the classic. Like classic is very heavily structure dependent. The only time I see it not is when you have a lineup of amateurs and there's no one really at that size requirement, and then they shy towards more of a bodybuilder-ish look that's near the weight cap, and then you're versing other guys that might have great structure but are also like 5-10 kilos under the weight cap. And I guess to an extent there, then you argue, well, even though it is classic bodybuilding, and it's like we've got to take into account size as well there, but very genetic structure dependent as well there. And you look at the guys at the highest level, the exact same. Like where do their lats insert on their back shot? Like how do their quads sweep? Like just the overall flow of the physique. It's like it's very hard to explain, but it's just this classic look that when you look at it, you go, that guy's classic. And it's very hard to kind of like put a words into the physique. You just see it and you're like, that's the most classic physique. Like that Frank Zane kind of look.
You don't see many of those physiques anymore. Like this season, there wasn't an abundance of them.
No, you don't really see too many of them. I feel like fuck, what's his name? They came second to Kyle. I think
Oh,
he's
yeah.
Dom.
He's
Dom's
quite a nice
got
physique. Yeah.
yeah. he's got a really nice classic physique. He's just so young. I think he just needs a little bit more time of tacking on muscle. Like, considering like he's under 30 and already pushing, Carl, it's been like in the mix of pro cards for like how many years now. I think it's just a matter of time till he fills it out. But yeah, like you said, you don't really see too many of them like coming through that are just truly, truly classic. And normally, if they do, they kind of win it.
Yeah, because I did find with the Dom, because obviously I'm friends with Dom and Kyle. Um, they were very different looks.
Mm.
But Kyle just had that mature, that
Yeah, you could
mature
definitely
look.
tell that Kyle was closer to the weight cap. Like I think he just sucked
Yeah,
under it. Where Dom, you could
okay.
look at him
You got to hear the
and you,
story. He's Sydney. So, yeah,
yeah,
I'll leave him to say that on some kind of podcast because
yeah. And
yeah,
you look at Dom, you're like, fuck, he's just got that classic look. But when you have him next to him, you're just like, there's definitely some kilos of muscle mass here. And it's like, well, when you go, all right, well, who's actually going to be more competitive on the pro lineup right now when we're handing this pro card out? And you go, well, you can see that there is some muscle mass differences, even though probably the shape and proportions, I'd probably say more Dom. But then when you actually look at the muscle mass and like it still has good proportions, don't get me wrong. Like, it would have been a very close battle, and I think that's why they spun them almost like three, four, five times or whatever it was. It would have been very close on that judging panel. You would have been picking hairs between the two.
well, I actually said to both of them it was a little bit of a case of apples and oranges, like they were different physiques, and they just had to pick a way to go. And they went Kyle's way this time around because Dom was obviously quite deflated, and I said to him, "Just go again, mate. Like, just book a flight. Like, you're there. Like,
Mm.
you just gotta,
So close, and like to be second to a guy that has almost won a pro card, I think two times. Like,
yeah."
or yeah, I think he's been in
And
the Open like twice. It's
Yeah,
like it's been so close, man.
Kyle is. I've been friends with Kyle about a year. He's a professional, bro. Like
Mm.
the way he conducts himself all year is like he deserves it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like he deserves.
doesn't miss a beat.
Yeah, like I remember he took me to Noodle and this was like a year out and he didn't even get the curry sauce. He's like, nah man, I'm a bodybuilder. And I remember thinking, damn, this guy's a nutter. Because I'd only met him. I think that might have been the second time I met him.
Good to
Uh,
know he's crazy as well, going to noodle and not getting the curry sauce.
yeah, I know. That's what I thought too. Yeah, no chili oil either. Man, Izzy was eating that in front of me when I was up the other week and I was just sitting there like, oh. Especially because like, I don't know, towards the end of prep, I just wanted rice and meat. Um, and so that was like seeing that was like, that is exactly what I want to eat right now. Post-show meal was Indian though. What's your judgment on that?
Man, I actually really love good Indian. Now, since
Same
I
as
lived in Brisbane for a while, there wasn't really many really nice Indian places though. But I can guarantee down in Melbourne, there probably would have been some absolutely phenomenal like Indian restaurants. I think I actually went one down there once, which was like Asian slash Indian. I can't remember the exact
yeah.
place. I think it might have been actually after a nationals like a couple of years ago. But I'm a big fan of Indian food. I love it. That or Asian fusion, like really good like Asian fusion. Like those are probably my two favorites.
Yeah, I rinsed Asian fusion when I was younger, so now it's like not as interesting to me. But Indian, yeah, is my go-to. So that was like I booked that weeks in advance. That all I wanted was that and a deli sandwich.
Mate, those are easily ticked off.
Oh yeah, the deli sandwiches everywhere. They're way too popular now. And I did a handful last week, and now I'm just trying to wash it all out of the system. Um, man, we've hardly touched on any of the topics here. So where do we go from here? One of the things, actually, this is probably a good one as well, and I actually specifically wanted to talk about this too because you get it. One of the biggest things that I noticed in this prep was the impact of variables outside of like just ticking your boxes, which are so important for the outcomes of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like
yeah. Like you obviously got
mentality.
to tick the boxes with like training, like nutrition and whatnot. But like at the exact same time, like you tick your training sessions off, their default as a competitor. You
Yeah.
got to get your steps done, their default. Like, but there's other variables that come into play that make prep a whole lot harder. Like, and as much as like, you can control as many variables as possible, these things really do weigh on the actual prep itself. What were some of the things that you ran into?
Well, I'm more so around because my last prep, I actually pulled out of my last prep, which was a couple of years ago. And I noticed at this prep, it was substantially easier, cruisier, less output, more food, just more manageable overall. And it was just the ability to conduct my day from an organizational perspective, to conduct my day from a mentality perspective. One of the little things, for example, as well, like I feel like I was so bought into just men's physique in specifically that that's all I cared about when it came to my presentation because I had a client who would constantly send me side chests, abs and thighs. And about 4 weeks, 5 weeks into it, he's like, hey, you didn't look at those photos. And I was like, because the judges aren't looking at those photos either. Like no one cares what you look like in a side chest. No, like you we need to see. And he's like, yeah, but I look my worst in my men's physique poses. I'm like, well, they're the ones that need to look good. And I think just having that all encapsulated in for me made such a difference. So like just buying into men's physique, mindset was good, stress was managed. My whole day was planned out. My whole day was conducted with bodybuilding as a priority, besides the business being the priority. But like I had the most bulletproof routine. And these are things which I didn't have last prep. And then in hindsight, when I reflect on the clients that really struggle with preps or struggling to get into condition, it's the ones that don't have these variables addressed. Does that make sense? It's the ones that the job
Yeah.
is really demanding or the stress is really overbearing, etc.
Mm.
And
I actually did a post on it not long ago, and I think it's one that a lot of people's run into. And I noticed that so many competitors, it's called like I call it the vicious cycle of prep. And what happens is like once you get caught up in this really high stress environment, let's say work, certain variables aren't in check, you don't have a good routine, it has a carryover effect into every other fundamental, like, and it kind of like leaks into it all. And like once one of these chains gets broken, everything kind of gets broken. And how it normally goes is like stress levels are super high, but now that stress level then impacts the sleep quality. Now the sleep
all
sucks.
that post.
Now the
Yeah.
yeah, now the training sucks because now your sleep sucks. But
Mhm.
now since your training sucks, you're now burning less calories. So now you're going to have to drop the macros and your rate of loss isn't in check. But now your weight's falling behind and your stress is like, through the roof because all these vectors aren't, you're losing strength. Like, training, you have to drop calories lower to try and offset, like, the stress that's kind of happened. Weight might even stall out. And this is big loop de loop because now that your weight's not dropping as much as what you'd want because of the stress is somewhat masking it. Doesn't stop it, but it masks it for a period. It causes more unwanted stress. And once people get caught in this big loop de loop, it's like, it's very hard to break out of because it's like stress, bad sleep, poor training performance. I'm losing more strength every single workout. It plays on their mind. I'm losing like, actual contractile tissue, even though they might not be, especially with like enhanced individuals. But it's just big loop de loop. And it's like all it comes down to is keeping these fundamentals in check, like you said, like with a good routine and good stress management. These are two things that can't be understated with a smooth prep. And I've run two preps where I've had to work in person as a trainer, a lot harder. Yeah. And then you do the last one here where I did it online and I'm doing this one online right now.
Yeah.
13 weeks in, don't feel a single thing. Like everything's in check. And it's like stress management. I do things that like, I can obviously like when it comes to training, I give every bit that I can with training wise. But then outside of training, I almost try and make it as calm environment as possible. When I'm home, I'm in a relaxed setting. When I'm making my meals, it's like I don't feel the pressure. When I'm doing my work, I take my time with my check-ins or whatever it needs to be to make sure the client gets what they need. But it's like at the exact same time, I'm not rushing myself. As long as my clients get the check-ins back at a good quality, I'm happy. So it's like I don't put this unwanted stress because once that stress gets driven up, it's so hard to just not be able to break out of it. And so many things don't go right. And that's probably the biggest one that I can say is just like stress management. It has that big leak over into everything. And people just go, oh, I can just brute force it. I've worked hard all my life, like 70 hours at work. Now I go to training, meal prep, and then they're doing X amount of steps because they're an office worker. It makes it so hard. And you think the prep's going to run smooth. But once you get the lifestyle factors in place that aren't just training and nutrition and maybe a little bit of sleep, like things run so smoothly.
Yeah, and also that feeds into one of the other things I'm a big believer in too is a lot of people, I'm sure you get people that sign up with you and they say, yeah, I'm doing season C26. That's what I want to compete in. They say they're fixated on that. And I say to them, yeah, cool, we can put that in as an arbitrary date. But sometimes the stars may align earlier. Sometimes it may not, a lot, like you might be coming into that season C preparation, then you have issues with your partner, you have an issue within the family, you have a career change, you might realize your stress is completely out of hand. I feel like your life needs to be in the most conductive place to commence that prep. And that for me, this is why this season works so well because we just had the dude come on as a hire who was a really successful hire. So he took some client load, he took some back end administration load, had some more responsibility come onto James. And then as a result, I was able just to focus on my clients, work from home, and smoothly transition into that. But if we rewound a year where I was wearing a lot of that responsibility and I was so fixated on, for example, doing season A24, it probably would have been a case of just me trying to grit it out. And you don't want it to be a case of just gritting it out. There's going to be periods where that's going to happen naturally, potentially. I don't feel like I had any periods where that happened this prep. But if that's the whole prep, it's not even, it's the fact that it's going to be like not enjoyable whatsoever as well.
The other one is like you said, like having all these fundamentals in line, but like even injuries, there was one that
Yeah.
people try and push through. Like they're starting prep and they've got like a lower back injury, like a full serious strain or something like that, or like some real bad tendonitis in your elbow. It's like, oh, I'm gonna do like men's physique. It's like Yeah, but we've got this crippling elbow tendonitis, and now we've got to push all these loads. We can't take breaks. We can't just work around it and, run at 70% deloads just to let your elbow feel great every single workout. It's like injuries are another one of those ones. It's like you want all these things in check. Like you said, like finances as well is a big one. Like making
Yeah.
sure you got money to commit to posing, like training. The amount of time people commit to a prep and they go, I literally don't have the money. And it's like 3, 4 grand a show for a female is pretty damn expensive. And that's just what it costs to compete. It's like hair, makeup, tan, show registration. It's like you want to do different shows as well. This stuff's expensive. So making sure you got your money in check, your lifestyle, so then that stress doesn't get driven up is very important. Like people go, oh, we just broke up my partner. Shit's going wrong. I want to do a prep, it's like, it's like we should maybe see how you're going first, put a couple of these big, fundamentals in check, see how you're handling everything, and then have a look at pulling a trigger on a season. Because people have these arbitrary numbers and seasons and stuff like that, like, oh, I'm this amount of weeks out. But if your lifestyle doesn't reflect it, it just makes stuff so much harder. And with prep, you almost want to make the prep as easy as possible. Like, don't get me wrong, you're going to be pushing hard. Like in the back end of prep, doesn't matter who you are, you're hurting on those last 6 weeks, you're dragging ass. But like, do you want to be dragging ass when shit's going sideways, or when everything's in check and you're managing these variables? Because prep's very easy to lose shitloads of muscle, to to not fully commit to like certain things that you need to have done. So making sure everything in your lifestyle is in check is like paramount before starting a prep. If it's not, just move it back a season. The stage is always going to be there. You can compete any single season. Like, FMG's got a show every single month. Like, IFBB's now got three shows. You can qualify at a show or do whatever it needs to, and then go to all these other ones. Like, there's so many shows now that you can do, and there's so many. The stage isn't going anywhere. It's getting better and better. Like you see with Tony doing it this year. Like every IFBB show is getting better and better. Lighting was poor, they fixed it. Best national show probably to date, they fixed it. So it's like these shows are getting better. So don't feel like just because you said that you have to do this show date, like you have to do it, and it's just like this locked in date. It's like if you're an athlete and you really care about what you're bringing to stage, like you don't care about that fixed date. You want to bring the best. And it's like if you're going into that stage showing knowing that there's so many things left on the table, it's going to eat you alive. So it's like one of those ones. It's like if you really care about the result and the physique you bring to stage, move it back a season, especially if it's going to net you a 20-30% better result in regards to the package and actual like enjoyment of prep as well.
And I feel like enjoying it and embracing it is incredibly important. With the financial one as well, I do think financials need to be in check because there are going to be expenses accrued on the back end of the prep. And I do find the first area that people do cut corners is the posing. That's generally the first area, and then supplementation as well. But the funny thing is, if they're enhanced guys, they don't have money until you tell them they need a performance enhancement. The second they need a performance enhancement, oh yeah, sweet.
What,
Like,
this echocardiogram? It's $400,
like
but
I'm not
that
going like,
is
oh,
like what? How much more test?
it's like, no, I don't want to. I'm not paying $100 for a posing session, and I'm not going to buy that photo package for $200. Oh, but $200 for that PED that's going to make a 1% difference. Yeah, like that's good. I'll get that tomorrow. Yeah, and that's a problem. But I just think not even from a financial perspective, because I do feel like you can not necessarily budget the prep, but I actually found that life was probably less expensive in the prep just due to reduction of social obligation. But it's just having that sense of comfort around that variable makes it just one less thing to worry about. But I think that
Mm,
relationship stability is incredibly important as well, because that's going to be not necessarily a bigger support network, but it's going to be a frequent support network that you may need to lean on. And if there's no support there, you're going to have problems. And I've seen frequently like individuals have problems with partners throughout preps because obviously the strain on it becomes more difficult as we go on, regardless of whether we want to admit it. Because even like the best partner, I think, is going to feel the strain. Because like I know when Izzy was in prep, I felt the strain. When I was in prep, she felt the strain too, regardless of the fact that if we'd tell external parties that everything was good. Do you know what I mean?
mm.
But if your partner if the partner comes at you in the prep, it's not going to be a good time.
Mm. It's
Yeah,
one of those ones that you want to start with the relationship in a good spot. Like,
yeah,
you don't want to be starting like you're already arguing all this stuff and you go, perfect, I'm going to go into prep and now ignore this person for 20 weeks, not even have a chat to him. It's like that
yeah,
stuff's going to go sideways. Like, you're definitely coming out single. Like, that's just how it is. So it's like you want to make sure stuff's in check prior. You are both in a good spot. You both have an understanding as well of what the prep's going to have. Like, there's going to be times like, when libido is going to be extremely low on the back end of prep. And it's like when it comes down to energy conservation, it's like, what would you rather do? Would you rather sleep an hour or lay down on a couch, or are you going to do something else? Like, it's just how
yeah.
it is with a relationship. And I think they need to understand that. And at the exact same time, like that's why it's very important to, go into that as much as you want to be able to engage in certain occasions, going out for breakfast and stuff like that. On the back end of prep, you're sitting there, you're cooked. It's like the last thing you want to be doing is sitting there at a cafe eating bacon, they're eating bacon and eggs, and you're sitting there. And it's like, and kind of, you don't want to sacrifice certain things, but at the exact same time, finding that happy medium and making sure you're in a good spot. So when things do sway a little bit in that opposite direction of like maybe the relationship isn't getting as much, it's only a small little bit. It's not like it's already skewed at the start. Now you've got it all in one direction, like making sure everything's in check and like, you're still giving your partner the bare minimums of what they need because like I said, there's no doubt about it. I don't think I've seen many individuals be able to not skew that at all. It's like there is going to be a little bit of give. And I think letting them know that prior to the prep as well is very important.
Yeah, no, I must admit, yeah, because even with me, I said to myself at the start of the prep, I'm still going to do date nights. I'm still going to go out. Like I'm just going to sit there and eat my Tupperware. And then I remember in Adelaide, I was on carb load even, and I went out with them all, and that was on 1,000 carbs, and I'm sitting there at dinner, and I'm like, guys, I can't be here. Like I'm going. But like I actually had like 4 weddings during the prep. That was a terrible idea. Yeah, like you
That,
go.
that would make it very hard.
You
I
have,
had a wedding once on the back end of my last prep. I think it was like 6 weeks out, and it's just like you sit there, and it's like after 2 hours, it's like, oh my God, I can't do this. It just kind of wears on you.
and you just want to go. Yeah, I remember like the last few, it would be the first hour, 2 hours, be like, oh, it's nice to be out. Have a Coke Zero, bring your meal or whatever you got to do. And then by hour 3, it's like, I need to be at home in bed. And because I was waking up so early too, the evenings were quite rough. I did find one of the biggest takeaways I got from the prep was the the value of an early morning. Because I used to wake up like 7:30, 8 o'clock before prep. Start work by about 9, I'd work till about 6 and then on my way. But I remember I started waking up at 5 and I'm like, this is nice. And then I pulled it to 4:30. Then I pulled it to 4, then I pulled it to 3:30. And I'm like, this is peace. But it becomes hard outside of prep to uphold that because I've moved to about 4:30 now because at about 7 o'clock at night, you don't want to do anything. And if I got caught out with anything, it was game over because I'd be falling asleep at the table.
It's
Yeah.
funny how that works. Just the routine just kind of like moves slowly forward. You get up
Yeah.
earlier and you get. I remember I started prep, same deal, like 7 o'clock. And it's like, well, now I'm like already at like, 5:30, 5 a.m. is like straight
Yeah.
up. So it's like by the end of it, you just kind of get up earlier and earlier. And I was the same with you. You can get so much work done early. It's
Mhm.
absolutely crazy. The only issue I found is like not many check-ins are coming in at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I'd be waking up, get my steps done. I'm like, all right, I'm ready for check-ins at 5 a.m. and just sitting there. Oh, there isn't that many in the inbox, but
Mhm.
yeah.
No, so but what works lucky for me is I have a few guys that do shift work, so they check in the afternoon. So I do that the next morning. And generally speaking, if someone checks in later in the day, the expectation is that I do it the next morning. But I always say you'll have it before you wake up. Um, But the more and more that I've done it, the earlier and earlier my clients have checked in. So it's made it a lot better for me. So at about 4:30, I have my check-ins. But I wake up, I walk, and then that first half an hour of the day where I just sit in front of the computer and eat is like, this is peace. And funnily enough, Wednesday's meant to be like my sleep-in day because no one checks in early. And this morning I woke up and there was 9 check-ins there, and I'm like, the one day I got appointments and I slept in, because yeah, like the one day, because usually Wednesday like no one checks in until like 9. So it's like my not my cruisy day, but it's like the day where I can just take the morning a bit slower. But no, that morning routine, I feel like no one will appreciate that piece of those first couple of hours until you're there because no one bothers you. At the night, you still have obligations because at the night, and I say this to all my clients, because at the night, clients are still going to message you because they're up and about, they're doing stuff, they're thinking. Number one, number two, events are going to pop up. Number three, you have the obligations that you have to like spend with your partner or whatever else, pets, kids, whatever it might be. You don't get that at 4 in the morning. All you have to think about is yourself. Yeah, provide your partners with
Uh,
the same times. Me, you wake up the same times, but I don't think she talked to me for the first 2 hours of the day. Yeah.
it's something therapeutic, and in prep, like you really like it. Like prep's quite chaotic, like to an extent. So being able to sit there, get all your get like a large chunk of your steps done, just kind of like chill out and just be like, all right, I get to eat a meal and just watch a show for like 20, 30 minutes or something. Like, and then before you even cracked open your first check-in, you're already sitting there at like 5 with like half your workload done, or like everything that you need to do to set you up successfully for a good day, you've already done. And it's like, all right, well, perfect. Now I can get cracking on the check-ins, and like you just got so many hours. I find in prep as well. I'm extremely productive. Like
Man, I
everything
was
is so timed to the T. It's like when off season, I'm a little bit all over the shop. Like, stuff still gets done. Don't get me wrong. But when you're in prep, it's like every minute has a purpose. It's like you're waking up this time, check-ins are done. It's like you don't waste a spare second. And that's one thing is like people are like, oh, in prep, you like productivity goes down. Like my productivity goes up. Like it's like the check-ins are getting done quicker. Like, I'm all over it, especially when you get up early and you get that extra bit of time.
The only thing that I found that the productivity was way higher for like client management and whatnot during the prep. The only thing that I noticed probably in the last 3 to 4 weeks was any task which took a higher stress load, I would push back. So it wouldn't be anything to do with clients, but it would be more like when I'd have to spend money on the business, like investing in things, or when I'd have to like follow up some kind of payment issue or something like that. Those kind of tasks became a lot more difficult to manage in the last 3 to 4 weeks, just because I found I got overwhelmed a little bit more easily. But outside of that, man, prep productivity was substantially better than being outside of prep. And I've actually now, and Izzy actually said to me last night, you got to stop putting so much pressure on yourself to uphold this. But I'm trying to uphold all the habits from the prep into the back, like into this off season now because of how productive that was. And I know that that keeps me in that rhythm of improvement, improvement, improvement. Obviously, because I have long-term endeavors in bodybuilding, I want to keep that. But like I say to all my clients, and I said this to a client this morning in a check-in, I said, and I've said this to a few, so if anyone's listening, you're probably thinking, is he talking about me? I could be talking about at least five of you because I believe in this so heavily. But with you need to uphold the small habits, the things that you think don't matter. They need to be upheld to the best of your ability at all times. And I'm talking things like making your bed. For me, it's things like making my bed, getting my supplements ready, laying my clothes out for the morning, walking in the morning. So today, this was actually the first time I walked fasted since I wrapped up the prep. I wasn't walking fast on the back end of the prep because my steps were only 8,000. But such a difference in regards just the mental fortitude and how dialed in I feel. And that's going to translate to every area of your life. So I feel like the little details do matter and people need to acknowledge that. And that won't just make you a better athlete, it'll make you a better person and a more successful person, whether you're a bodybuilder or not.
Couldn't agree anymore.
Yeah.
Couldn't nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like people just don't take into account. I don't look, to be honest, I actually don't make my bed, but I don't think I've
Makes
ever.
me so productive when I make my bed. Comes back from the walk. Wow, this bed's made. This is amazing.
It looks nice. Sometimes later in the day, I do it when I clean the house. I'm a little bit weird like this too. Like I can't go to bed till the whole house is cleaned. And so like I'll be like cleaning the whole house at like 8 o'clock at night. But that's part of that routine for me. Like that makes me feel cleansed. That means I can sit on the couch and do nothing and I can get on with my shit. And everyone's gonna have different little things within themselves.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that I changed in my prep right off the get-go was the morning routine. Like every day I wake up, I'll go fasted steps. If I need to do cardio, I'll also do that pretty much fasted as well there. One to stall out my meal times, but I think it puts me in a really good headspace. I'll always try and do an outdoor walk if possible, where I'll just kind of go outside, just respond to messages that I popped through the night before. And that way my DM box is pretty much completely clear. I've also gone for a nice outside walk. I've got my meal done, got my cardio done. I've had a shower, and it's like just that small little productivity has a huge carryover because I've already given back to myself that day. So it's like then I can get in the check-ins, nice clear headspace, knowing I've already done over half my steps. And all of this just adds up. Like I said, trying to bring down that stress as much as possible. So it's like I go in that day not having to stress about steps. Like the steps are now easy to get because I've already done that. The meals are on time, and especially like that small little stalling out of a meal for an hour and a half in the morning. Like when you're not really hungry, it's like, all right, I'm going to get this done, push out that meal a little bit, and then I'll get my first meal in. Like, I'm not going to go catabolic by doing, a 30, 40-minute steps, especially if it's going to help productivity and then meal timings and hunger throughout the day. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely I actually find I'm the most hungry when I wake up, which is quite annoying. Yeah.
I think that goes on in the back end of prep. You get hungrier and hungrier, but that's why, like, last prep, I didn't do it from the get-go, but this time I've just kind of like cemented it because I find when you do fast, it's like if you do it like at a time when you already are hungry, it just makes things astronomically worse. But over time, you slightly get more conditioned to it. Like you see people like do, I think the Hodge twins used to do it ages ago. They used to do like fasting till like 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something. Yeah. And it's like, well, when you fast at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you've never done it, you're starving. But after a week or two, it gets kind of very normal. And it's like, all right, so I kind of extrapolated that to the prep. So now it's like I just condition myself to like when I wake up, sure, I'm a little bit hungry, but it's like when I'm actively doing something, responding to messages, and I've got my mind off it, it's like it's an easy way to push out an hour and a half. I'm like, I got to do my cardio, I got to do my walk, I got to do my shower, and then I can get my breakfast. So it's like it's kind of like a little reward system. It's like, but I tick off so much prior to the day. It just helps tremendously with the carryover to prep itself.
It's funny you say that because I remember the Hodge twins as well. They were the ones that introduced me to fasting. But when I first discovered fasting, I thought that you could fast and then eat whatever the fuck you wanted. So I'd like break
Well,
the
that's
fast.
how they solve it as.
Yeah, they did because they'd have a large pizza after a 24-hour
Mm,
fast. And I think, oh, I
yeah,
can do it. But you don't sort of acknowledge that they are genetically gifted as well. Uh,
yeah.
lifetime naturals, I believe. I forgot they even exist until you brought them up just then, to be
I
honest.
know. I was thinking about it today when you were like, when we wrote down the questions here, we were like a couple of little ones, like, what got me in? I was like, remember just watching Hodge Twins and like Beast Mode Jones or whatever it is, like the
Oh
physiques of
man, I
greatness.
loved Beast Mode. Like I loved Chris Jones.
One of the OGs, and then Matt
Yeah.
Ogus as well. I
Yeah.
was like, those were probably like the three that I used to watch the shit out of when I was starting up, and it's like probably had a big carryover effect to me actually starting bodybuilding.
Yeah, Chris Jones is one of my favorites. I actually haven't met too many people that are aware of him the way I am. Just going to Denny's and getting his sweet tea. He's unsweetened
Yeah,
with his buck.
yeah,
Yeah. And just because like it was such a raw channel and it's so interesting to see how many followers he got from such raw videos
mm,
because they were quite average. Really.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, just raw videos back then. But to be honest, he got in at a very good time when no one else was doing
Yeah.
it. It was like him,
Yeah.
Christian Guzman, like Matt Ogus,
Yeah.
and it was like realistically, like and the Hodge twins. It was like those were like the main four, and he just got in at a great time. He was just real with it as well. Had a good physique, practiced what he preached, trained hard, like a lot of the basics, pretty much down packed. And yeah, it's like I think to be honest, right now he's kind of dwindled off a lot. Like you look at his following now, like Physiques of Greatness probably actually still has more followers than what he does on his actual like new account that he made up like 5, 6 years ago, whatever it is. So it's like I think it's really dropped off when you have like the likes of like Kristen Guzman. Like, he puts out like high quality content, really good videos. And it's like I think now the production quality really does come into play.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think these guys did get into YouTube when it was a little bit more tappable, is probably the word that I'll use. But yeah, Chris Jones is probably one of my bigger ones. Obviously, Ziz was one of the big ones when I was younger too. And then I beat his brother on stage, which was nice. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then I'm just trying to think. Hodge Twins I liked. I was never crazy about the Hodge Twins though.
Mm.
I was a
Now,
bit
Physiques of Greatness was like one that I really watched, I think, a decent amount as well there. Jeff Seed used to upload a decent amount of videos as well back then, which were quite interesting as like, as a coming up in men's physique and whatnot. Like it was always interesting to see him because he kind of had like that like Ziz lifestyle, like what you mentioned, like, where you watch come, but he was just like probably a little bit more glorified on that sense.
Yeah, I did. One of my biggest, one of my favorites back in the day was Sadiq. It's quite interesting because I always really liked men's physique, like during the Buendia Sadiq phase, but I was frequently told you're not men's physique. And then when I stripped down, that's actually funny, bro. That's a like when I stripped down for my last show, I was meant to do classic, and then Izzy would constantly say, because we we're first together, your waist is so small, your shoulders are so wide, your waist is so small, your shoulders are so wide. So then when I floated the idea of men's physique to my coach back then, he was like, "There's no fucking way," because I was fat. And then when I floated it to Joe, Joe was like, "Yeah, actually, that's probably where you should be." Um, so it's so weird to know that I'm in that category 10 years on, when that's where I always wanted to be when I was like 19, 20. I was obsessed with Sadiq Hadzovic. I don't, yeah, like, yeah, he didn't really post much, but there was just something about his look at the time.
Yeah, I even remember like Steve Cook as well.
I
Like
like
in there,
Sadiq.
it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like Steve Cook, like Ryan Terry, like Sadiq, Jeremy. Like those are like kind of like the four, like, a majority of people would like follow there, like that were actually at like the higher level Olympians. Like, but yeah, it was just one of those ones like you look at them and you're like, fuck. It's like next thing you know, like what you said, you're up there and you win in the overalls from the men's league. It's like flashback 10 years ago, you probably never thought that was going to be happening. You'd probably think, what division am I going to be doing? It's like, what not? Am I even going to compete?
Yeah, because I actually, funnily enough, though, when I was doing classic, or when I thought I was in classic, that's probably when I fell out of love with bodybuilding and gave it up for those years. Pair that with like a umbilical hernia surgery too, because I just didn't see myself making it. So then when I sort of discovered that men's physique, it's something that I wish I discovered earlier because I could have had a good few years at it and really applied, and I would have been a lot further along now. But you live and you learn, man. But back as well, Jeremy Buendia was to me, he is he defined men's physique. Obviously, now the categories moved past him and hit the look that he presented. But just with, I found as well with men's physique, I guess this is going back to the start of the video too. They used to really award like they wanted that small waist, wide shoulders, but there was a lot less of an emphasis on that like density and detail in the midsection. They just wanted that streamlined midsection. Now they've gone for that real dense, detailed midsection, thanks to like Ali and Ryan Terry. And I think that's a bit of an evolution, which has pushed Jeremy on the outer, even though he's probably just ages caught up with him too. He's
Yeah.
still impressive. He's still hella impressive. Yeah.
I think he was one that really like solidified like men's physique and pushed it in that certain direction. And it's like once he took a little bit of time off, ran into some dramas with personal life and stuff like that,
Remember
it's a
that?
little bit hard. He just kind of got left. left in like the dust. And it's like, some of these, the men's physique just kind of shifted a different direction. And then, like you said, like, you got like pretty much like Ali and Ryan that are probably going to be head to head. And like these are probably going to be like probably in the three, maybe Brendan Hendrickson in there as well, depending on like, how he shows up at some of these shows. It's like, really dense midsection, but like also looks very aesthetically pleasing with great tapers. Like they've all got great tapers, but just like very sharp through the midsection. Like genetic structure wise as well, like Ryan, Terry, and Ali. Like, whew, you look at that midsection, you're like, it's pretty much like the God's gift of midsections.
Yeah, I do think as well there would be I'm a big believer in training the midsection. Training of the midsection is not something that I've necessarily doubled down on, but something that I will double down on moving forward. But this is something that a lot of people neglect. But at the same time, it does come down to the individual because it can create a blockier look. But that density at the midsection, serratus, etc., you do have more control over it than a lot of people think. And if you are in men's physique, even classic to a degree, you can see the way that it's going where they do really want to see that. So it would be silly not to prioritize it.
Yeah, and I think if you train it correctly and you're not absolutely stupid with it, like you can still keep that waist and midsection super tight. It's not like you're gonna do like a couple of sets of ab crunches in your off season, you're gonna blow out this waist. Like if you keep stuff in check, like body weight, like and all of this other stuff, like that also is gonna compound into it, and you reasonable with your ab training, like nothing absolutely drastic and doing 50 sets of ab crunches a week, like you're probably going to be fine with it. And it's like the density in those midsections, like you see, like you're not going to get that from not training it. Like you look at Ali and you look at Ryan, like these guys are training abs like with intent every single week. And it's deliberate. It's like a majority of it's going to be genetic structure around that midsection size anyway. But as long as you keep the stuff in check, like body weight and like, and whatnot, and you're still training your midsection, keeping it tight, like even practicing stomach vacuums in the off season or just even core control, it's like this stuff's going to have a big carryover effect into it. Now, if you're doing 10 by 10 deadlifts every single day alongside mass amounts of like midsection training, sure, you're going to run into some drama, but that's what good programming comes into, to make sure that, there is adequate, like, stimulus going through the midsection, but also not too much to the point where it's going to cause maybe, some dramas in regards to adding a couple inches or whatnot.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like a lot of people as well who are enhanced, they do believe that when you're using certain compounds and whatnot, you could run into issues with the midsection distension. But I do believe, I'm a firm believer that the midsection distension is a food volume slash body fat related issue, which is going to cause a problem. Similarly to like how I believe that a lot of the health issues that we see in bodybuilding are a body mass, blood sugar, blood pressure issue. And people don't acknowledge these factors because there's more direct factors which they can point the finger towards. Likewise, like I don't think training abdominals excessively is going to have the same impact on blowing out your waistline as just getting too fat is going to, or not having that abdominal control via vacuums.
You force feed for long, like extreme periods of time, have like poor dietary adherence, push up body weight far too much than what it needs to. Then you combine that with poor programming, like, where you may be training like, spinal erectors far too much and all this stuff. It's probably going to aid in a blockier look. But if you've got like keeping everything in check in the off season, you're training your abs with intent. Like there's not going to be any dramas. It's only going to net a better look, put it like that on stage, especially when it comes to like that. Because imagine being able to keep your even upper slightly higher and do like a light crunch and still have really prominent abs, so you don't sacrifice even more of your taper. Like you see some people like they have zero abs, so they literally just kind of have to kind of fold over to an extent just to even get some basic lines popping in there. It's like so, like if you're doing everything right and you're training the abs with intent, man, it's like it's gonna net a better look. There's no doubt about it. Especially when you keep that off season in check and you actually have shit in line, and it's not like you're just force feeding yourself like drastic amounts. But like, oh, I got to be 120 kilos before I start prep next, and your weight cap's fucking 95 kilos or whatever it is. It's like keep that shit in check, and you're not gonna have issues with the VB can.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people forget that there's weight caps as well. Because weight caps in men's physique too, just not in the amateurs. But I reckon they'll eventually move that into the amateurs. Yeah. We might wrap it up there, man. Thank you very much for jumping on. I appreciate it. It's nice chat to
Very, very
you.
welcome, man.
I feel
I
like
can
we've
see that
got
we obviously had a lot of topics that we had that we didn't, but I
not,
knew this was going to be how it went, man. I
yeah,
knew we were just going to kind of run with the chat. I could tell that just by even catching up with you at the Queensland show. I was like, there's
great.
so many things that obviously we have similar opinions on that, deserve to be shed light on. We can literally go for 4 hours.
It's funny because when I told Rani about the podcast, actually, I think you told her already. She
Mm.
said, "Let's see who likes to talk more."
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
both like to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, I chatted to her. I think it was yesterday or something. I was
Yeah,
like, yeah, well, I'm gonna be on the pod, and
yeah.
she asked me which one. I was, and she said that exact same thing. So,
Oh,
well,
she
I
did.
guess she'll have to sum it up, get the word count ready.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, because definitely with these topics we'll go further. Well, hopefully we can do another one as well. We can probably do another one with my brother because I was going to get him on today, but because I did the one yesterday, I was like, I won't push him too much. Because I don't know what you're like with podcasts, man, but I feel like when you're doing like if you do multiple in a week, sometimes it reaches a point where you're a little bit like
Yeah.
up you a little bit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
We already do one a week, and then, like I don't mind throwing a second one here or there, but like, you do multiple of them. They do take up some time as well. Like, the preparation for them, like, writing out the
Yeah.
questions and whatnot, the questions that we didn't even use. So you might want to save
Yeah.
them for next time.
No, no, it's funny because we've done so many that sometimes we don't even do the run sheets anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Fine,
Uh,
they do flow a little bit better, but it depends who you have on too. Because obviously, for some people, you do need to go a little bit more specific with topics. I know with me and you, we didn't really need to do that because we can just talk and talk and talk. But
yeah.
for some individuals, you need to keep it structured. And there's nothing worse than getting someone on who can't keep a conversation flowing.
Oh, no.
Talk about
Or,
that.
or like you ask them a question and they get it done in like a sentence, and you're like, well, fuck, we're about 5 questions away from finishing this podcast. It's going to be a 20-minute potty.
Yeah, that's happened. But we try to cap them at like an hour because I feel like people tune out there. We see that in
Yeah.
statistics. Yeah. All
No,
right.
100%.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate it.